let's talk about Mitchell Robinson, man. My guy Ian Begley, shout out to Ian Begley, had a couple updates on Mitch. And obviously, Mitch is going to be a hot candidate in free agency. It's going to be a big offseason for him and the Knicks. And, whether or not he's going to be a Knick is still up in the air right now. So let's go to Ian Begley's comments on Mitch and his status with the team. Let's hear from Ian.
Couple notes here on Mitchell Robinson as we're about a month away from free agency. I do know that there are Knicks decision makers who would like to see Robinson back with this team next year. I know that the Knicks have sent some trainers to work with Robinson in the offseason, and when the Knicks were at the Combine, they did talk to people about potential scenarios if Robinson were to sign elsewhere, but I think that's just the Knicks doing their due diligence in case Robinson were to get a huge offer from another team. I think there's an expectation that some playoff contenders will have interest in Robinson, and by my count, those contenders wouldn't be able to offer more than the mid-level exception. And so for the Knicks, they can exceed the salary cap to bring Robinson back. Obviously, the two sides did talk about extensions over the course of the season. At one point, prior to the trade deadline, I was told that they were not close on an extension. The sides were pretty far apart. I think there was some frustration there. I don't know if that frustration is still there, but I do know, again, that there are Knicks decision makers that would like to see Robinson come back. I don't know if that's a unanimous opinion, but it tells you a little bit about where things are with the Knicks and Robinson as we're about a month away from Robinson's free agency.
We already heard that that Detroit was a potential team with interest. Al, I'll start with you, man. What are you thinking about what happens with Mitch here with free agency starting up in a couple months?
It's difficult. And Ian makes it difficult. He in his reporting, he says there's some decision makers that want Mitch to stay, but there's also some decision makers that aren't hard pressed to keep him around. And that's where you're starting to see mock drafts put like Williams and Duran in the situation for the Knicks because they could be in the need for a center. But it's so much, man. There's just so much going on because I know the Knicks are looking after Jalen Brunson. There's rumors of like potential side and trades. I'm waiting that Mitch might not be back in the Knicks uniform. And I think it will be a potential sign and trade, whether he goes to the Pistons or wherever else. I feel like the Knicks are going to move him and try to get some sort of asset in return, either to help them in the draft or just help them with just the overall roster compensation for this team. So do you need to spend over the mid-level for someone like Mitchell Robinson? No, because that's what those guys are making or less. So if you can go find someone out on the market, I could see the Knicks going in that direction. But I see them wanting to get something in return for Mitch.
Yeah, I think for me, it just really depends on the market, right? I think they are interested in bringing him back. As you heard Ian say that he is working with some of the Knicks training staff in the off season. He has dropped, some social media hints about, New York being home and I think he does want to stay, but I think he's going to go to the highest bidder. Me, I would keep him. I like what Mitch brings to this team, both defensively and as a guy that, will put back high percentage shots. Yes, his game needs to step out a little bit. That hasn't improved since he's been here. I think that's kind of been the most disappointing aspect of his game, even though he works on it. Like I said, just watching him in pregame shoot-arounds, he does work on his outside shots. He does work on, those 10 to 15 footers, but we just don't see it in the game, and I still think that we haven't. I still think he's a work in progress just in terms of overall play development, and I think we should continue on that track because I don't want to risk losing him for nothing. That would be terrible.
Yeah, I agree with you there. You can't let him leave for nothing. When they didn't trade him at the trade deadline, I immediately thought there must be some plan. Like they must have some inside track knowing that they're going to bring him back, or they have a sign and trade for Brunson in the works, something like that. But you can't let him leave for nothing. Alex brought up Robert Williams earlier. I still think the Robert Williams $12 million, 4 years, 48 contract is still a good baseline for Mitch. $12 million per year. I don't see how Mitch could want any more than Robert Williams after what Robert Williams has done during these playoffs, and his team is going to the finals.
Yeah.
I think that's a good number for Mitch, and maybe even the Knicks could ask for a little less. So I think $12 million per year, CP, you even just said it, like that's a pretty good number. And like I'm not crazy about signing Mitch long term, but if they do end up doing it, I'm not going to be super upset. And the one thing about it is I don't want to just draft a center at 11 because we're letting Mitchell Robinson walk.
Right.
I don't want that to be the reason we take a guy at 11. So,
well, I mean, the key point is you can't lose the asset for nothing. That's the key point. And I look at him and I say, like, I understand the hesitancy because if you're looking at him and thinking the Knicks are going to build a championship contender, you're probably saying, how many minutes is he actually going to be playing in playoff games? Probably more towards the 20 to 25 than the, 35 to 40, right? Because he can't, maybe step out or make plays like you would want somebody in that role too. But at the same time, if you can get him for a Robert Williams type contract, that's a no-brainer. Like that's fantastic value because he's still bringing a lot of positive stuff to the team, and I mean, if that's his market, there's not anything to think about. You lock that up. If he wants more than that, it's obviously now you're starting to get into that gray area where you got to start. All right, well, we can't lose the asset for free. Might end up a little overpaid, but we could probably move off because some team is going to want to take the chance. So I think that the Knicks probably, not to say they need to do everything in their power to keep him, but I think it has to be somewhat of a priority unless they have a guarantee that money is going to be better served elsewhere to fill other needs.